The death of former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has sparked a mix of emotions across the country, with few mourning his passing and many criticizing his policies and legacy.
We did not enjoy him. His regime was a total failure.
He ruled us for 8 years and today is no more. So for me, it's life well spent.
In a mix of emotions, throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria, some weep, some rejoice, and others care less. On July 13, 2025, former President Muhammadu Buhari died at 82 in a London hospital, closing the chapter on a long, complex public life. From soldier to civilian president, Buhari was defined by discipline, austerity, and paradox, admired and criticized in equal measure. His legacy remains a mix of coups, reforms, silence, and unyielding conviction. Though the name Muhammadu Buhari often sounds incomplete without the title general, the late former president, who passed away in London on Saturday, was more than just a military man. A two-time leader, first as military head of state, and later as an elected president, Buhari's name is etched permanently in Nigerian's history. Hi guys, welcome to African Story. On today's episode, look at the life and times of a general turned Democrat. His name, Muhammadu Buhari, who died on 13 July 2025. Join us as we go through his history. Do stay tuned and enjoy the ride. Muhammadu Buhari was born in December 1942 in Daura, in Katsina State, in the far north of Nigeria, near the border with Niger. At the time, Nigeria was controlled by the British, and it would be another 18 years before the country gained independence. Buhari's father, who died when he was 4, was Fulani, while his mother, who brought him up, was Kanuri. In a 2012 interview, Buhari spoke of being his father's 23rd child and his mother's 13th. He said his only recollection of his father was of 2 of them and one of his half-brothers being thrown off the back of a horse. Buhari attended primary school in Daura and Mai Adua, before proceeding to Katsina Modern School in 1953 and Katsina Provincial Secondary School, now Government College Katsina, from 1956 to 1961. Buhari began his military career in 1961 when he enrolled in the Nigerian Military Training College, now the Nigerian Defense Academy in Kaduna. From 1962 to 1963, he trained as an officer cadet at the Mons Officer Cadet School in Aldershot, England. In January 1963, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant and appointed platoon commander of the 2nd Infantry Battalion in Abeokuta, Ogun State. By 1978, he became military secretary at the Army headquarters and a member of the Supreme Military Council. Between 1979 and 1980, then holding the rank of colonel, Buhari attended the United States Army War College in Calais, Pennsylvania. His steady rise in the Army saw him occupy a number of sensitive command and staff positions. These included military secretary, military governor of the old northeastern states, Federal Commissioner for Petroleum Resources, Chairman of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, General Officer commanding 4th Infantry Division, and later the 3rd Armored Division. He stands in 1983, when some Nigerian islands were annexed in Lake Chad by Chadian soldiers. He is still remembered in the northeast after he blockaded the area and drove off the invaders.
Fraud, indiscipline, corruption, squandermania, misuse and abuse of public office for self or group aggrandizement, which had assumed debilitating proportions in the last few years, will be dealt with ruthlessly, no matter whoever may be involved.
December 31, 1983 saw another coup against the elected then President Shehu Shagari, and Buhari, now a Major General, became Nigeria's head of state and commander-in-chief. He was 41 at the time. By his own account, He was not one of the plotters, but was installed and subsequently discarded by those who held the real power and needed a figurehead. Other accounts suggest he played a more active role in removing Shagari than he was willing to admit. But his reign was short-lived. In August 1985, just 20 months into power, he was ousted in a military coup led by his chief of staff, General Ibrahim Babangida. His military regime is best remembered for the war against indiscipline, launched on March 28, 1984. The campaign, spearheaded by his strongman de facto vice president, Major General Tunde Idiabon, aimed to instill civic responsibility and public morality in a country plagued by disorder. Under war against indiscipline, citizens were forced to queue in public spaces, respect the national flag, and were sometimes flogged for lateness. Civil servants who were late for work were publicly humiliated by being forced to do frog jumps. This era was marked by mass arrests and clampdowns on journalists. Buhari's government also locked up Nigeria's greatest musical hero, Fela Kuti, a thorn in the side of successive leaders, on what was said to be on-top charges relating to currency exports. If you find this video worthwhile, please take out some time to smash a like and subscribe to the channel, as it goes a long way in supporting our efforts. Thank you. Now let's get back to the video.
Umaru Dikko on the right here is brother-in-law of Nigeria's ousted President Shagari. He was a minister in the Shagari government and was recently named by the new military government as top of their wanted list. Earlier this year, he told ITN he felt safe in London.
I don't feel safe from the military government. I have every reason to feel safe from the military government because I believe that the British government and the British people will not support illegality. Whatever the military junta in Nigeria would want to do, their jurisdiction does not extend to Britain.
The Umaru Dikko saga of 1984 was a major scandal of General Buhari's tenure when, as Nigerian military head of state, his government allegedly orchestrated a failed attempt to kidnap and repatriate Umaru Dikko, a former minister under the ousted civilian government of Shehu Shagari from the UK, to Nigeria to face corruption charges. The controversial plot, which involved drugging Umaru Dikko and smuggling him in a crate, was foiled by British authorities at Stansted Airport, leading to a diplomatic rift between Nigeria and the UK. Economically, the Buhari regime emphasized frugality, slashed public spending, banned foreign loans by state governments, curbing imports, and promoting industrialization. Yet, his tenure was criticized for his authoritarian tendencies, the jailing of public officers without trial, the suppression of the press, and the sweeping human rights violations. Buhari's attempts to rebalance the public finances by curbing imports led to many job losses and the closure of businesses. As part of the anti-corruption measures, he also ordered the currency be replaced and the color of the naira notes changed, forcing all holders of the old naira notes to exchange them at the banks within a limited period. Prices rose while living standards fell, and in August 1985, Buhari was ousted and imprisoned for 40 months. General Ibrahim Babangida took over. Muhammadu Buhari was placed under house arrest for over 3 years by General Ibrahim Babangida's regime after the 1985 coup that ousted Buhari's government. After his removal from office, Buhari quietly withdrew from public life and lived in Kaduna. Nearly a decade later, Buhari returned to national prominence in 1994 when General Sani Abacha appointed him executive chairman of the Petroleum Trust Fund. The main consideration for the appointment was because he was renowned and a stickler for strict discipline and incorruptibility. The Petroleum Trust Fund, established to channel proceeds from increased fuel prices to development projects, became one of the most visible government agencies of the era. Under Buhari's watch, the PTF intervened in 6 key sectors: road construction and maintenance, water supply, education infrastructure, health, food security, and special projects. While critics questioned the fund's transparency, Many Nigerians lauded the PTF's nationwide impact and Buhari's reputed incorruptibility. This image of a no-nonsense upright disciplinarian became the cornerstone of his political comeback. After his release and, he said, having seen the consequences of the breakup of the Soviet Union, Buhari decided to enter party politics, now convinced of the virtues of multi-party democracy and free and fair elections. Despite this, Buhari always defended the 1983 coup, saying, and I quote, "The military came in when it was absolutely necessary and the elected people had failed the country," end of quote. He also rejected accusations that his measures against journalists and the others had gone too far, insisting that he had been merely applying the laws that others had been breaking. With the return of democracy in 1999, Buhari entered partisan politics. He contested the presidency on the platform of the All Nigerian People's Party, ANPP, losing to the incumbent Olusegun Obasanjo of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. On the 3rd, he remained politically active, contesting again against Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, also of the PDP. In the disputed polls, Buhari officially polled 18% of the vote against Yar'Adua's 70%. Despite rejecting the outcome, he watched as the ANPP joined Yar'Adua's government of national unity, a move he strongly opposed. In 2010, Buhari left the ANPP and co-founded the Congress of Progressive Change. The CPC, deeply lacking financial and structural capacity, still made a strong showing in the 2011 elections. Buhari polled over 12 million votes, second only to the PDP's Goodluck Jonathan, who won with 22.4 million votes. Buhari's consistent message of integrity resonated especially with the Talakawa, which are the urban and rural poor of the north. In 2015, Buhari finally achieved his ambition, riding on the strength of a historic opposition merger that bettered the All Progressive Congress. He defeated Jonathan to become Nigeria's first opposition candidate to unseat an incumbent.
Hello, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, how are you? I'm all right, Your Excellency. Congratulations. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Yeah.
Campaigning on the anti-corruption, security, and economic reform, Buhari was sworn in May 29, 2015. He won re-election in 2019, extending his tenure to 8 years. During his presidency, Buhari faced immense challenges, including economic recessions, escalating insecurity, and a public image often marred by silence in times of crisis. Yet, his administration recorded notable gains, which includes infrastructure expansion, social investment programs, and the Anchor Boras program, which supported agriculture. He pushed forward major rail projects, completed roads and bridges, and signed off on long-delayed reforms in oil and gas. However, much of this was financed through Chinese loans and Euro bonds, raising concerns about Nigeria's debt sustainability. Buhari's presidency was dogged by criticism. Many accused him of running an insular, nepotistic government, citing lopsided appointments heavily tilted towards his northern base. His response to the farmer-herder conflict, especially regarding rampaging Fulani herdsmen, drew allegations of ethnic bias. Security deteriorated on several fronts. Boko Haram remained active in the northeast, while kidnappings, banditry, and unknown gunmen plagued other regions. Billions allocated to security yielded little visible impact. General T.Y. Danjuma in an interview said, and I quote, "Under Buhari, the level of insecurity rose to an unimaginable height, requiring an increase in the budget to buy more equipment to fight insurgency. Yet, we did not get a commensurable result from the huge funds spent on defense. It means the funds were not well utilized and nobody has been charged for corruption. It is sad. Some of us regret that we are not in the system because there is so much money to eat and people are eating it, not minding Mr. President." End of quote. Buhari had to deal with controversies of being partial in dealing with the rampaging Fulani herdsmen menace. being a Fulani man, critics accused Buhari of nepotism, that he only romanced the menace and was never all out to deal with the rampaging terrorists, whose terror led to loss of hundreds of lives. At the peak of the lopsided appointment, in June 2020, some southern leaders dragged President Buhari before the Abuja division of the Federal High Court over alleged marginalization in the appointments made by his administration since 2015. His administration was also criticized for failing to tame inflation, curb unemployment, and manage Nigeria's depreciation. The fuel subsidy regime, which President Buhari once described as fraudulent, persisted for most of his time in office. Meanwhile, Nigeria overtook India as world poverty capital under his watch. One of the most defining moments of his presidency was the EndSARS protests of 2020, a youth-led campaign against police brutality. Buhari's government was slow to respond, but when it finally did, it deployed a repressive hand and alienated a generation. The Lekki Tollgate incident, where soldiers opened fire on peaceful protesters, remains one of the most controversial events of his tenure. Buhari's repeated medical trips to the United Kingdom sometimes lasted months, fed into rumors about his health and capacity to govern. At the peak of public anxiety, an outlandish conspiracy theory emerged that Buhari had died and be replaced by a Sudanese body double named Jibril. The presidency repeatedly dismissed the rumor, but Buhari's long silences and perceived detachment during national emergencies only strengthened public skepticism. His communication style, slow, heavily curated, and often delayed, was widely criticized. On one occasion, he ordered security forces to deal ruthlessly in quote with ballot box snatchers, prompting outrage.
Let's also look at another problem that seems to be emerging under your presidency. You've only been in power 9 months, but this problem in the southeast of the country, we're seeing the Indigenous Peoples Organisation of Biafra, IPOB. They are protesting peacefully for the most part on a regular basis. And there has been video, I could show you some video that's been posted of a very...
No, thank you.
These are the images the president didn't want to see. They're on the internet and we can't verify exactly what they show, but it appears as though security forces were shooting at unarmed protesters in the southeastern state of Abia. This is footage I can't personally verify, but it looks as though the security forces have gone in very heavy-handedly shooting, and there were reported to be 7 deaths. I'm wondering, how are you planning to deal with this issue of Biafra? You, of course, have first-hand experience.
Put a 30-month civil war, at least 2 million Nigerians were killed. And for somebody to wake up, maybe he wasn't born when there was this fighting in Biafra and said he wants Biafra again. We have multi-party democratic system now. Let them organize themselves and vote for to have a state within a state. But to try and interfere with movement of troops, with economy, looking for Biafra, after losing 2 million people, I think they are joking with Nigerian security, and Nigeria will not tolerate it.
President Muhammadu Buhari's approach to Nigerian separatist movements, particularly the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB and Yoruba nation agitators, was defined by a highland security-focused strategy with little political engagement. His administration deployed military operations like Python Dance in the southeast, declared IPOB as a terrorist organization, and arrested key figures such as Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Igboho. While these measures temporarily suppressed open agitation, they were accompanied by allegations of human rights abuses and further alienated the affected communities. Buhari rejected dialogue, framing separatism as an existential threat to Nigeria's unity, but failed to address the underlying grievances like economic marginalization and political exclusion. Consequently, his tactics weakened visible separatist activities in the short term, but they also deepened resentment and radicalization, leaving the root cause unsolved. His approach prioritized cohesion over reconciliation, resulting in a fragile and unsustainable suppression of separatist tension. on the day Buhari left office, some Nigerians were asked in a video that was shared widely on social media what they will remember most about him in office, and all respondents said the same thing: bag of rice. The simple reason: rice is a staple food in the country. A standard 50 kg bag of rice, which will feed a household of 8 to 10 for about a month, costs just 7,500, equivalent to $5 and 3 British pounds respectively, under Goodluck Jonathan, who was defeated by Buhari in 2015, but went up to 60,000 naira in a few years after. This led to hunger in many parts of the country. The huge surge of price of rice was because, in an echo of his earlier policy as military ruler, Buhari banned importation of rice to encourage more Nigerian farmers to grow the crop. However, local producers were unable to meet the high demand, and many of his supporters lost their faith in him. Ismaila Danyaro, a resident of the northern city of Kano, said he had backed Buhari since he first came to contest the presidency. He told the BBC in an interview, and I quote, "I used to buy a 50 kg bag of rice under Goodluck Jonathan, but when Buhari came, I found it difficult to buy even a 25 kg bag of rice because it became too expensive." End of quote. Buhari built much of his political and public image on the reputation of integrity, discipline, and anti-corruption. From his early days as military leader to his tenure as Nigeria's president, Buhari was often portrayed as a man of modest lifestyle, incorruptible values, and a stern commitment to national service. His simplicity reflected in his lifestyle, public statements, and declared assets stood out in the political environment, often plagued by allegations of extravagance and graft. Buhari's reputation for honesty began during his time as military ruler from 1983 to 1985, when he launched a nationwide campaign against indiscipline and corruption. Though controversial and criticized for his harsh methods, many Nigerians saw it as a genuine attempt to restore order and accountability. He was perceived as a leader who did not enrich himself through public office and who held others to high ethical standards. When he returned to power in 2015 as democratically elected president, Buhari capitalized on this image to campaign on an anti-corruption platform. His victory was largely driven by public disillusionment with widespread corruption under previous administrations. Buhari's stance helped restore some public confidence in government, especially during his first term, when he initiated several high-profile investigations and asset recovery efforts targeting former officials and political elites. However, critics argue that while Buhari maintained a personal reputation for integrity, his regime struggled with allegations of selective prosecution and internal inconsistencies. Some key figures close to his government were accused of misconduct, raising questions about whether his anti-corruption efforts were truly impartial. Despite these criticisms, Buhari's own financial conduct and as to image remained largely untarnished throughout his presidency. In the broader context of Nigerian politics, Buhari's legacy remains closely tied to his image and as a principled, incorruptible leader. Whether universally admired or cautiously critiqued, his reputation for integrity shaped both his leadership style and public perception. It continued to define how Nigerians, supporters and critics alike, remember his time in office. Buhari was also widely known for his Spartan-like lifestyle, a trait that distinguished him from many of his contemporaries in Nigerian and African politics. Throughout his career, Buhari projected an image of personal austerity, modesty, and discipline. He avoided lavish living, kept a relatively low profile outside of his official duties. His personal simplicity became a central part of his public persona and contributed significantly to his reputation for integrity. Even as president, his personal lifestyle reportedly remained restrained, with few indulgences. His approach drew sharp contrast to the lifestyle of past Nigerian heads of state, who were frequently accused of enriching themselves while in office. Allegations of corruption, misuse of public funds, and an extravagant lifestyle surrounded many high-ranking officials, feeding public cynicism. In this context, Buhari's image as a man who lived simply, both during and after his military rule, earned him a degree of respect among ordinary Nigerians, even among those critical of his governance. Buhari's personal conduct also invited comparisons with some former African leaders known for modesty, such as Julius Nyerere of Tanzania and Nelson Mandela of South Africa, who were also praised for living simply and shunning personal enrichment. However, while Buhari shared similarities in lifestyle with these leaders, critics argue that his administration did not always reflect the same austerity at the institutional level, as some members of his government were still accused of financial impropriety. Nevertheless, Buhari's astute lifestyle remained one of the most defining features of his political identity. In a country where public office is often associated with wealth accumulation, Buhari's personal restraint offered a rare counterexample. It became a key part of his appeal, particularly to voters in the north and to civilians disillusioned by the excesses of political elites. Nigerians love nicknames, and some of the country's leaders' nicknames have stuck even long after they left office. For example, former military leader Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida is still called Maradona for what people perceived as his tactical dribbles on issues and situations. For Buhari, it was Baba Go Slow after it took him 6 months to name his first cabinet on assuming office in 2015. Baba in Hausa and in many similar African languages mean father.
On the historical antecedents, I decided to drop the uniform, come back, and eventually I am here. So really, I have gone through it over and over again. That's why I'm not in a hurry virtually to do anything. I will sit and reflect and continue to have my clear conscience.
Responding to his nickname years after, Buhari said it wasn't his fault that it took a long time to get anything done. Yes, we are slow, but the system is slow. It is not Baba that is slow, but it is the system. So I'm going by the system and I hope we will make it, he said in 2018. Nigerian politics in 2022-2023 remains one of the most interesting in the country's democratic history. In the minds of many, it was the first time that a sitting president wasn't really bothered about who his successor was going to be. Openly, Buhari declared he would support whoever won his party's All Progressive Congress nomination, but insiders say behind the scenes he was ambivalent. Buhari's body language emboldened all 5 candidates seeking the APC's endorsement, and his supporters all went around saying they had his back. At one point, it felt as if Buhari was opposing the candidate of his eventual successor, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What followed was the declaration of the Naira swap policy, which Buhari's administration announced would, among other things, limit the influence of money in the 2023 elections. Many Nigerians believed that the policy was targeted at preventing Tinubu from becoming president, even though he had been chosen as the APC candidate. The policy involved the confiscation of trillions of old Naira notes and their replacement with new notes of the highest denominations. However, there were not enough new notes, leading to shortage and suffering by millions, particularly the less well-off, who rely on cash for their daily transactions. The policy was only suspended after the Supreme Court ruling, just days before the election. Tinubu won narrowly with 37% of the vote cast, as the opposition was divided. Any assessment of Buhari's presidency must take into account his declining health, which caused him to take significant absences from work, especially during his first term. The former military ruler may have reinvented himself as a Democrat, but there was no such commitment to transparency concerning his own health, with many Nigerians left uninformed about the fitness of their head of state for office. Despite these shortcomings, Buhari maintained an image of personal modesty. He shunned lavish lifestyles, attended few social functions, and was rarely seen at elite gatherings. Friends and foes alike acknowledged his simplicity and honesty, qualities that endeared him to many, even when they disagreed with his leadership style. in both military and civilian life, Buhari projected an image of discipline, restraint, and incorruptibility. Yet, his legacy remains sharply divided. To some, he was a principled nationalist who sought to bring order to a chaotic nation. To others, he was a rigid, underperforming leader, aloof to public sufferance, and blind to the nuances of a modern democracy. Muhammadu Buhari married twice, first to Safanatu Yusuf from 1971 to 1988, and then in 1989 to Aisha Halilu, who survives him. He had 2 sons and 8 daughters from his 2 marriages, bringing his children to a total of 10. He died at the age of 82 in a London hospital after days on life support. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I would love to know your thoughts about the life and times of General Muhammadu Buhari from his time as a military head of state to his time as a civilian president. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to smash a like and subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification button to get more content like this about African history. It's been Nando from Afriverse Historic. See you in the next one.